The world returned to her as a trembling blur of light and sound. At first there was only the cold hum of machines, the faint hiss of circulating air, and the distant murmur of voices that didn't match the cadence of pain. Then came sensation, the burn of oxygen in her lungs, the pull of gravity on her limbs, the weight of something unfamiliar pressing against her chest. Her eyes fluttered open, and sterile white light flooded her vision. She gasped, the sound mechanical, distorted by the faint reverb of metal beneath flesh. Her arms rose instinctively, but they weren't her arms anymore. Golden plates moved in place of skin, mechanical joints whispering with a grace too precise to be natural. When her gaze followed the movement, horror bloomed in her throat like a scream that couldn't escape. Memories flooded back in jagged flashes, restraints biting into skin, the taste of copper, the endless questions she never understood. Pain is data, one of them had said. And she is valuable. They had cut her apart to learn how her kind could sing to light, how her veins carried resonance instead of blood. She remembered begging for the dark, for quiet, for death. But death had never come, only sleep. Now she was awake again, pieced together like an experiment that refused to end. A trembling voice broke through the fog. "Easy, don't move yet." The words were gentle, human, unfiltered by the cold modulation of the researchers she'd known. She turned her head, the movement stiff, and saw him. He wasn't dressed like them. No sterile coat, no insignia of authority. His clothes were worn, gray fabric stained with oil, sleeves rolled past strong, scar-marked forearms. His face was tired in a way that came from living, not cruelty. Brown eyes studied her not as a subject, but as something fragile. "You're safe now," he said quietly. She didn't believe him. Safety was a word they'd used before every incision. "Where?" Her voice cracked, static bleeding through. "Where am I?" "Off-grid," he said. "In a decommissioned medbay outside the city. No one knows you're alive." She stared at him. "You should have left me dead." He shook his head. "You weren't dead. Just taken apart." He moved closer, cautious, as if approaching a wounded animal. "They call me Rian," he said. "Engineer. Civilian. Not part of the program." She studied his face, searching for deception. "Then why?" "Because what they did was wrong," he said simply. "And because I could fix what they broke." Her eyes flickered with faint luminescence, the light within them dimming and rising like a pulse. "Fix," she echoed. He gestured toward her chest, where golden armor met flesh through seamless integration. "You were dying. I replaced what they took. Not all of it, but enough to bring you back." "Bring me back for what?" she asked. "To keep existing. To choose," he said softly. "Maybe for the first time." The words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. Choice was a luxury she had never known. Even before the labs, her species had been hunted for their biology, living conduits of resonance energy. She'd been captured as a child, raised inside steel walls, studied until she forgot the sound of her own language. Now her heartbeat, if it could still be called that, echoed with mechanical rhythm. She lowered her hands, staring at the faint glow beneath her palms. "What did you do to me?" "I stabilized the neural link," Rian said, stepping closer. "Your consciousness was fracturing when they overloaded your resonance field. I used synthetic fibers to bridge the gap." "So I'm not me," she murmured. "Not entirely." "No," he said gently. "You're more than what they left behind." For days she lay in that small medbay, learning to move again. The room was dim and quiet, lit only by the blue shimmer of the stasis pods lining the wall. Rian brought her food she couldn't taste and taught her how to control the resonance that now pulsed through her artificial veins. "Think of it like breath," he said one morning, adjusting a sensor near her shoulder. "You don't control every inhale, you just remember you can." She focused, and the light beneath her skin shifted from blue to gold, the hum deepening until the walls vibrated softly. "Good," he said. "Now ease it down." She exhaled shakily, the glow fading. "Feels like fire," she whispered. That's your energy adapting to the interface, he said. You're sinking. To what? She asked. To yourself. At night, when he thought she was sleeping, she watched him work. His hands moved over shattered circuits salvaged from the ruins of his own world, each motion careful, almost reverent. There was grief in the way he built things, as though every machine was a monument to something he'd lost. She wanted to ask, but words didn't come easily. He rarely spoke of himself, but once, as they repaired a damaged power core together, he told her fragments. I was with them once, he said. Not the scientists who hurt you, but their predecessors. I believed what they said about progress. About necessity. Until I saw what progress costs. She listened, his reflection flickering in the golden plates of her arm. And now? She asked. Now, he said, I build to heal, not to control. Slowly, her body began to remember what it meant to be alive. Each day, she moved a little farther from the bed, testing her balance, her strength. Her reflection in the mirror still startled her. Half woman, half machine, all memory. The scars that remained were maps of a past she could neither erase nor forgive. Yet when Rian spoke to her, it wasn't to erase her pain but to anchor her through it. You don't owe them forgiveness, he said one night, as thunder rolled beyond the shelter's metal walls. You just owe yourself the chance to live without them. She turned to him, eyes glowing softly in the dark. And you? What do you owe? He hesitated. Atonement. For me, she asked. For all of it, he said. Weeks became months. The world outside changed slowly, though they rarely saw it. News broadcasts whispered of conflict, of cities burning under new regimes, of laboratories gone silent as the program fractured. Rian's repairs became upgrades, her enhancements grew more refined. He taught her how to mask her energy signature, how to move unseen. They'll come for you, he warned. They always do when something they broke starts working again. Then let them, she said. I won't be their experiment anymore. He smiled faintly. That's the spirit. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, he said, tightening a bolt on her wrist joint, you're finally sounding human. The first time she stepped outside, dawn painted the horizon in pale gold. The wind brushed her hair, lifting strands that caught the light like molten copper. The world felt too vast, too alive. Her enhanced vision caught every detail, the shimmer of dew on rusted rails, the pulse of distant drones overhead. Freedom was overwhelming. Breathe, Rian said quietly, walking beside her. It helps. She nodded, though breath still felt like imitation. What will we do now? She asked. We find others, he said. People they hurt. People like you. She turned to him, expression unreadable. And if they don't want to be saved? Then we give them the same thing I gave you, he said. A choice. That night, she stood alone by the cliffs above the shelter, watching the stars emerge one by one. Somewhere among them, she imagined her captors still searching, still trying to control what they feared. The wind howled across the jagged rocks, carrying the scent of ozone and memory. She flexed her hands, the gold plating catching starlight, and felt something stir inside her chest. Not anger, not grief, but resolve. The human had rebuilt her body, but he had also rebuilt something else she'd thought lost forever, the capacity to care. The realization frightened her more than the pain ever had. She whispered to the sky, her voice barely audible. My name isn't theirs anymore. Below, Rian listened from the entrance of the shelter, hearing the hum of her resonance ripple through the air like a heartbeat syncing with the earth. He smiled, though the expression carried both pride and sorrow. He knew what came next. Healing was never the end, it was the beginning of the next fight. Tomorrow, they would start searching for others. But tonight, for the first time, she slept without the machines watching her, and he stayed awake, making sure the dark stayed kind. Morning came as a pale shimmer through the cracked skylights of the shelter. The old med bay, once a tomb of machinery, now breathed faintly with life. Quiet hums of working circuits, the rhythmic pulse of resonance energy circulating through the rebuilt power grid. Rian sat cross-legged by the central console, his eyes scanning the holomap that flickered with faint orange signals. Each mark represented a transmission, distress beacons, encrypted pings, fragments of communication from survivors of the program's collapse. Most were too weak to trace, buried under interference from orbital sweeps. But one pulse stood out, repeating with perfect rhythm. He tapped the display. Coordinates, 42 degrees north, 118 degrees west, he murmured. Abandoned research site. Looks recent. Behind him, she stirred. She no longer woke with confusion or pain. Her motions were smooth now, measured, each gesture balanced between strength and grace. You found something, she said, voice clearer than it had ever been. The synthetic undertones were gone, only faint resonance lingered in her tone, like a chord vibrating beneath speech. A signal, Rian said, glancing back at her. Could be survivors. Or could be a trap. Then we go anyway, she said simply. He studied her for a moment, the determination in her eyes reminding him of someone long lost. You don't hesitate anymore, he said. You taught me that, she replied. Fear only feeds those who cause it. She crossed the room, fastening the magnetic clasps of her armor with a sound like chimes. Her movements carried a confidence that had grown from necessity, not pride. They traveled across the wastelands in a battered skycraft patched together from spare parts and old dreams. The world below was unrecognizable, fractured cities swallowed by sand, oceans turned silver by nanite decay. Above it all hung the silent ruins of orbital stations, their shadows drifting like ghosts across the surface. From the cockpit, Rian watched the planet with quiet sorrow. We did this, he said softly. All our progress, all our hunger for control, and we called it advancement. She looked out beside him, golden eyes reflecting the endless wreckage. You built cages, she said, and forgot how to stop. Maybe fixing one of those cages is a start, he said. Maybe saving you wasn't enough. You didn't save me, she said. You reminded me that I could save myself. They landed near the ruins of what had once been an oceanfront facility, half buried in ash, its outer walls torn open by explosion. The sky smelled of rust and rain. As they approached the main corridor, she paused, her enhanced senses catching vibrations beneath the surface. Movement, she whispered. 2 levels down. Rian checked his scanner. Nothing. I don't see it. You won't, she said. They're cloaked by resonance shielding. The same kind they used on me. He nodded grimly, drawing his sidearm. Guess we're not alone. They descended through twisted stairwells and shattered glass, the sound of dripping water echoing like distant footsteps. The deeper they went, the more familiar the architecture became. She shuddered. This place, she whispered. I know it. The chamber at the heart of the facility still smelled like antiseptic and fear. Steel tables lined the walls, covered with half-dismantled machinery. In the center, a single containment pod glowed faintly blue. Inside, suspended in stasis, floated another like her, skin pale, eyes closed, faint light pulsing beneath translucent veins. They made more, Rian said, his voice heavy. She's still alive, she whispered, hand pressed against the glass. They didn't finish the extraction. The monitors flickered with fragments of code, heartbeat signatures, neural mapping data, progress logs. She read them with growing dread. They were trying to link consciousnesses, she said. To merge resonance fields across hosts. Hive control, Rian muttered. If they'd succeeded. They didn't, she said sharply. Not while she's still breathing. She found the release valve and looked at him. Can you override it? Maybe, he said, pulling out his toolkit. But once I do, it'll trigger an alert. Anyone monitoring this facility will know she's awake. Then we move fast. As he worked, sparks flared from the console, the power conduits whining under strain. Almost there, he muttered. 10 seconds. Her gaze remained fixed on the figure inside the pod. The alien's face looked peaceful, too peaceful. A memory surfaced unbidden, her own awakening, the sterile light, the voice that said, "Don't move yet." Her throat tightened. "You don't have to carry this," Rian said without looking up. "You could walk away." "And leave her to the same fate?" she asked. "Never." The pod hissed open, releasing a wave of cold vapor that rippled through the room. The being inside convulsed, then gasped, a ragged, mechanical sound. She reached out, steadying her. "It's all right," she said softly. "You're safe now." But the other's eyes snapped open, glowing with erratic light. "Unsafe, unbound, control breach," she stammered, her voice a fractured echo. Rian cursed. "She's wired to a failsafe. They built her with a neural detonator. If she escapes containment, she self-destructs." The rescued alien trembled, her body pulsing with unstable energy. "No," she whispered. "I can stop it." She pressed her palm to the other's forehead, her resonance field sinking through sheer will. The light flared, colors shifting wildly between gold and white. For a moment, the world dissolved into vibration. Then silence. The pod alarms faded, and the second alien went still, breathing, alive, but calm. When it was over, she collapsed to her knees, gasping. Rian caught her before she hit the ground. "You stabilized her," he said, astonished. "How?" "I remembered what you said," she murmured weakly. "Healing isn't control, it's connection." He smiled faintly. "You're quoting me now. Don't let it go to your head." But even as she tried to stand, the monitors flickered to life, displaying incoming signals. "Unauthorized neural interference detected," an automated voice announced. "Containment response initiated." The walls trembled. "They know," Rian said. "We have to move." He lifted the unconscious alien onto his shoulder. "Can you walk?" "I can run," she said. They fled through collapsing corridors as defense drones awoke from dormancy. The air filled with energy bolts and shrapnel. She moved with impossible precision, her body a symphony of human design and alien instinct. Every shot she deflected, every leap she took across debris, was a reminder of what she'd become, a fusion of creation and defiance. When they burst through the outer wall into the rain, Rian shouted over the storm, "The ship's 300 meters east." "Go!" she yelled, covering him with pulses of gold light that shattered drone after drone. One exploded too close, the shockwave throwing her backward. Rian turned, shouting her name, but she was already getting up, eyes blazing. "I told you," she said. "I can run." They reached the ship as the facility erupted behind them, a pillar of fire tearing into the sky. Inside, alarms screamed as Rian forced the engines to life. "We can't go back to the shelter," he said. "They'll trace the energy signature." "Then we don't go back," she said. "We go forward." "To where?" "To where they least expect." She turned to the still unconscious alien resting in the med bay. "There are others like her. I felt them when I linked. Somewhere out there, they're waiting." Rian looked at her, admiration mingling with concern. "You realize what that means," he said. "You're declaring war." "No," she said. "I'm declaring freedom." As the ship lifted into the clouds, lightning illuminated the horizon, revealing the silhouette of orbital satellites repositioning overhead. "They're watching," Rian said grimly. "Let them," she replied. "They can't cage what they don't understand." He glanced at her, seeing the fierce calm in her expression, the same calm she'd once had before her captors shattered her. Except now, the fear was gone. The scars had become purpose. "What should I call her?" he asked, nodding toward the sleeping alien. She thought for a moment. "Lyra," she said. "It means light, in my tongue." He smiled faintly. "Fitting." Hours later, when the stars returned, she sat in the cockpit, staring into the endless dark. Rian joined her quietly, his reflection merging with hers in the glass. "You realize," he said softly, "we might never stop running." "Then we'll run together," she said. He nodded. "You've changed, you know." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You built me to." "No," he said. I built you to live. The rest you did yourself. For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars drifted by, silent witnesses to their fragile alliance. Somewhere in the distance, the first signals of rebellion began to rise. A network of voices, awakened and unafraid. She closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the ship's engines sync with the beat of her reconstructed heart. The rhythm was uneven but steady, a reminder that imperfection wasn't failure, it was proof of being alive. Rian leaned back, watching her with quiet wonder. So what happens when you find the others? He asked. She smiled faintly. Then we teach them what it means to choose. The stars bent around the ship's hull as they slipped through the edge of the Valerie drift, an expanse of broken satellites and debris fields that shimmered like shattered mirrors against the void. The hum of the engines pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, a strange duet between living flesh and crafted machine. She stood at the viewport, her reflection faintly illuminated by the gold veins beneath her skin. Beyond the glass stretched the scattered bones of forgotten empires, derelict research stations, fractured vessels, and the drifting carcasses of the program's reach. They burned worlds to make weapons, she murmured. All that power, and they still couldn't learn restraint. Behind her, Rian's voice was soft. Because restraint isn't in their design. It's in choice, and they gave that up long ago. He sat at the console, patching together fragments of intercepted transmissions. The static danced like whispers between frequencies, voices layered in despair and defiance. We're not the only ones, he said. I'm hearing chatter from half a dozen rogue signals. Cells forming, people defecting. The collapse is spreading faster than they can contain it. She turned, eyes catching the flicker of data on the screen. Then it's starting. What is the consequence? She said simply. Every empire that builds its foundation on suffering eventually hears the echo of its own cruelty. Rian leaned back, studying her. You sound almost hopeful. Hope, she said quietly, was something they never taught me. You did. They drifted through the wreckage for hours, scanning for resonance frequencies matching her own. The trail was faint but deliberate, a breadcrumb left across the dark. When the scanner pinged, it was like a heartbeat rising from silence. Found it, Rian said. Signal strength nominal. Coordinates ahead. As they approached, a shape emerged from the debris, a hollowed carrier ship orbiting a dead moon, its insignia scorched away. Looks abandoned, he said. Looks alive, she corrected. Listen. Even before they entered orbit, she could feel it. A faint hum at the edge of perception, the whisper of other resonance fields flickering in synchrony. It was like hearing distant voices calling her name. The docking sequence was rough, the airlock doors groaning as they sealed against decaying metal. Inside, the ship smelled of ozone and rust. Emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the corridor. Stay close, Rian said, weapon drawn. Always, she replied. They moved through the halls, their footsteps echoing off the steel. Then, faintly, came a sound, a low pulse of harmonic vibration that made the air tremble. She followed it to a sealed chamber. Her hand brushed the console, and the lock disengaged at her touch. Inside, half a dozen figures stirred from cryo-sleep pods, their forms delicate and angular, each one bearing traces of the same modifications she carried. They're like me, she whispered. No, Rian said softly. They're what you were. One of the pods opened with a hiss, revealing a young alien woman with skin the color of moonlight and faint cracks of light tracing her veins. Her eyes opened, bright silver, trembling with confusion. Who are you? She asked weakly. Someone who understands, she said. The girl's gaze flickered toward Rian. And him. The reason we're free, she said. He fixed what they broke. Rian stepped forward cautiously, scanning the pods. Their vitals are unstable. Cryo damage. Can you save them? She asked. Maybe. If I can reroute power from the secondary core. He began working immediately, fingers moving across ancient circuitry like a pianist coaxing a forgotten melody. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and the hum of the ship deepened as systems came alive again. The revived survivors gathered weakly around her, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and recognition. "You were in the archives," one whispered. "The first successful hybrid, the one they called Project Echo." The name made her flinch. "That's not who I am anymore," she said. "They built me to be a weapon, but I chose something else." "Chose?" another asked, confused. "We were never given choices." "You have one now," she said firmly. "Stay hidden and live in fear, or help end what they started." Their gazes shifted toward Rian, the only human in the room. "You trust him?" a young male asked. She met his eyes. "With my life. And you should too." "Why?" "Because he's the only one who looked at me and saw more than the scars they left behind." When the repairs were finished, the ship's reactor hummed steady again. Rian leaned against the console, wiping sweat from his brow. "Power's stable," he said. "But not for long. The reactor's old, if we push it, it'll burn out." "Then we make it count," she said. "Send a signal to all surviving resonance nodes. Tell them the program's gone. Tell them the war they built us for is over." "That's not a message," he said. "That's a declaration." "Exactly." He met her gaze, half admiring, half resigned. "You've learned to sound dangerously optimistic." "That's your fault," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You infected me with it." "Then I hope it's terminal," he said. "Because there's no cure." They transmitted the signal at dusk cycle, a low-frequency pulse encoded with her resonance signature. The message wasn't long, but it carried power. "We are awake. We are not weapons. We will not be owned." Across the void, the signal spread, leaping from one silent satellite to another. For the first time in years, the network that once enslaved them now carried a message of rebellion. Within hours, responses began flooding in, fragmented, desperate, hopeful. Rian watched the screens light up like constellations. "You just told the galaxy you exist," he said. "No going back now." "Good," she said quietly. "I've spent enough time in cages." Their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared as the ship's sensors detected an approaching vessel, military class, bearing the program's insignia. "They found us," Rian said, jaw tightening. "How?" "The broadcast," she said. "We gave them a beacon." "Then we run," he said, reaching for the controls. "No," she said. "We fight." "There's 7 of you," he said. "And one half-broken ship. Then we'll use what we have." She turned to the others. "You wanted purpose? Here it is. Not vengeance, freedom." Their eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw not fear but fire. "You lead," one said. "We follow." Rian sighed. "You're going to get me killed." She smiled faintly. "You rebuilt me, Rian. You should have known I wouldn't stay quiet." The battle erupted in the shadow of the dead moon. The enemy cruiser loomed enormous, its guns glowing red-hot as plasma fire streaked across the void. Her ship shuddered under impact, hull plating peeling away in molten ribbons. "Shields at 40%. Rian shouted. "We can't take much more." "Then we don't," she replied. "Divert all power to resonance amplifiers. That'll fry the core." "Do it." He hesitated, then slammed the controls. The ship's lights dimmed, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that grew louder with every passing second. She stepped to the center of the command deck, eyes closed, energy radiating from her like dawn breaking through darkness. Her companions mirrored her stance, their resonance fields synchronizing. "What are you doing?" Rian shouted. "Ending it," she whispered. The air vibrated, light fracturing into waves of gold and silver. The resonance pulse built until space itself seemed to bend. The enemy ship faltered, its systems overloading under the harmonic surge. Then, with a flash brighter than a star, the pulse erupted outward, tearing through the cruiser's hull like light through glass. The explosion rippled across the void, silent and beautiful. When it was over, the sky was full of drifting embers. Rian stared in awe. I didn't destroy them, she said quietly. I released them. Released. From the chains they built into themselves. The resonance unbound their control systems. Their weapons won't obey commands again. He blinked. You disarmed a fleet with a song. Not a song, she said. A heartbeat. After the battle, silence returned. The survivors gathered in the dim glow of the med bay, exhaustion etched across their faces. Rian worked in silence, patching circuits, sealing breaches. She approached him quietly. You look tired. I am, he admitted. You should sleep. Can't, he said, glancing at her. Every time I close my eyes, I see what they did to you. To them. And I wonder if we've really fixed anything. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm despite the gold armor. You can't rebuild the world overnight, she said. But you gave it a reason to start. He met her gaze, eyes reflecting the faint glow of her chest plate. You really believe that? I have to, she said softly. Because you did. Outside, the stars shimmered, each one echoing with faint signals, resonance beacons lighting up one by one. The movement had begun. Across colonies and ruins alike, those once enslaved by the program's technology were waking, remembering their names, reclaiming their will. The galaxy had changed, and though danger still lingered, hope had become a contagion no one could contain. She stood by the viewport, watching the lights spread like veins of fire through the dark. We started something, she whispered. Rian joined her, resting a hand against the glass. Then we better see it through. She smiled faintly, the reflection of starlight glinting off her golden skin. Together. Always, he said. And somewhere in the silence between heartbeats and stars, the universe listened. The stars glimmered like watchful eyes as the rebellion spread across the rim. The message she and Rian had sent rippled through shattered colonies, through forgotten networks and rusting satellites that had once carried orders of obedience. Now they carried something new, frequencies of freedom. Across the void, resonance-born hybrids awakened to the truth of what had been done to them. Some hid, terrified of the power within their veins. Others rose, gathering under a single unifying signal, hers. The humans who once served the program fractured into factions, those who clung to control and those who wanted to atone. But within that growing storm, she felt the cost of it. Every new signal awakened meant another life uprooted, another heart struggling between fear and purpose. And every night, when the lights of their ship dimmed, she asked herself if she had the right to be their beacon. Rian watched her more quietly these days. He'd seen leaders before, soldiers, scientists, engineers, but none who bore the weight she did. She carried it like she carried her scars, visible, deliberate, unhidden. He'd seen the way her eyes dimmed when transmissions came in, cries for guidance, for vengeance, for salvation. And every time, she chose restraint. They'll see that as weakness, he warned her once. Then they'll learn, she replied. Power means nothing if it only repeats what broke you. Tonight, as the ship drifted through the fractured remains of the Vega Gate, he saw the toll more clearly than ever. Her movements were slower, her pulse faintly irregular. The upgrades he'd given her months ago were beginning to strain under the sheer load of resonance she carried. You're overclocking, he said softly. I can stabilize it if you rest. She smiled faintly. You always say that. Because you never listen. Because I'm not tired, she lied. The call came during second watch. A coded transmission, barely coherent, full of static and distortion. But beneath the noise was a voice they both recognized, Lyra. Emergency, containment breach, coordinates attached, they found us. Her words cut off in a scream before the channel went dead. Silence filled the bridge. Rian's jaw tightened. She's one of yours, he said. We have to go. If it's a trap, then we spring it first. She nodded once, already entering the coordinates. The engines roared to life, and the stars stretched into streaks of light as they jumped. The silence between them during the flight was heavier than gravity. "Do you ever regret saving me?" she asked suddenly. He looked up, startled. "Never. Even with everything that's happened? Especially because of it." She turned away, expression unreadable. "Then don't regret what's coming." They arrived at the edge of a dying world, a planet stripped bare by mining, its atmosphere stained red by radiation. The facility below still burned, flames licking through collapsed towers. They descended through the haze, landing near the wreckage. The air was thick with ash and memory. "Stay behind me," Rian said as the hatch opened. "Not a chance." They stepped into chaos. The ground trembled with distant detonations. Hybrid survivors ran through smoke, their bodies flickering with unstable resonance. Some screamed as their energy turned inward, collapsing them into light and dust. They triggered the failsafes, she realized. The program found a way to weaponize their awakening. Rian cursed. "Then we shut it down." They found Lyra in the ruins of a laboratory chamber, kneeling beside a shattered core. Her skin glowed faintly, fractures of light spiderwebbing across her chest. "They tried to make us one," she whispered. "To merge every resonance into a single network. I fought it, but—" Her gaze lifted to the flickering lights overhead. "They're still trying." "How many are connected?" she asked. "Hundreds," Lyra said weakly. "They're burning them alive across the grid." "Can you disconnect?" "Not without killing them all." The words hung heavy in the air. Rian knelt beside the damaged core, scanning its systems. "If I reroute the overload through your neural link," he said, "you could absorb it, buy them time." She shook her head. "No. It would kill me. It might save the others." "And then what?" she said. "Who leads them when I'm gone?" He met her eyes. "They'll lead themselves. Isn't that the point?" For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick, final. Then she smiled faintly. "You always did know how to ruin a good argument." She turned to Lyra. "Get the others clear." "No," Lyra said, tears streaking through soot. "You can't." "I can," she said. "Because I was built to survive what destroys others." Rian reached for her hand. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," she said softly. "Because they broke me to be a weapon, and I'd rather die proving they failed." She stepped into the core chamber. The energy field shimmered, crackling with unstable power. As she raised her hands, the golden light beneath her skin flared to blinding brilliance. "Rian," she said without looking back. "When it's done, run." "I don't run," he said. "Then at least live." The surge hit like a solar storm. Energy arced through the chamber, turning air to glass and time to silence. She reached inward, feeling every resonance connection across the grid, hundreds of voices screaming in unison. She didn't suppress them, she harmonized them, reshaping chaos into unity. The pain was unbearable, white-hot threads of light tearing through her nerves, but beneath it was clarity. Every life she touched became part of a single pulse. The grid's overload began to collapse inward, contained by her will alone. Her body convulsed, energy bleeding from every seam. "It's working," Rian shouted. "Hold it." "I am," she gasped. "But it's too much." The floor cracked beneath her as the energy built. Her golden armor split open, revealing the light within, blinding, beautiful, human in its defiance. When the explosion came, it was soundless, a sphere of pure light expanding outward, erasing the storm, the flames, the pain. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the light faded, leaving silence and the faint crackle of settling ash. Rian stumbled through the wreckage, coughing, eyes burning from the heat. "No," he whispered, searching. The core was gone, melted into glass. The chamber was empty. He dropped to his knees, fists striking the ground. "You promised," he whispered. "You said we'd finish this together." Behind him, Lyra approached slowly. She did finish it, she said softly. The resonance stopped. The others are free. And she's gone, Rian said bitterly. No, Lyra said, placing a hand on his shoulder. She's not. He looked up, confused. What do you mean? Lyra gestured toward the sky. High above, the clouds shimmered with faint golden light, moving like breath. She's part of the grid now, Lyra said. Alive in every one of us. The air vibrated softly, a familiar hum threading through the silence. And then, faintly, her voice. Rian. His head snapped upward. I hear you, he whispered. You kept your promise, she said. Now keep mine. What promise? Live. The resonance faded, but the warmth lingered. He stood slowly, the grief in his chest tempered by something else. Pride. You stubborn, impossible miracle, he murmured. Weeks later, the fires died, and the world began to heal. The freed hybrids scattered across the stars, building sanctuaries where there had once been prisons. Rian helped where he could, guiding, repairing, teaching them to live beyond survival. Sometimes, when the wind carried the right frequency, he'd hear her faintly in the hum of the machinery or the rhythm of his heartbeat. The rebellion became legend, its leader known only as the Broken Star, the one who turned destruction into creation. He never corrected them. To him, she wasn't legend. She was memory. On the anniversary of the day the grid fell, he stood on the rebuilt cliffs above the ocean, the water glowing faintly gold beneath the night sky. Lyra joined him, her features calmer now, steadier. They're gathering again, she said. Not for war. For remembrance. Good, he said. She'd like that. You still talk to her? Every day. Lyra smiled faintly. And does she answer? He looked toward the horizon, where the stars pulsed in rhythm, one bright flicker followed by another, like breath. Always, he said. The tide rose, carrying whispers that were neither wind nor water. Somewhere in the distance, a faint light rippled through the clouds, the same gold that had once burned in her veins. The universe hadn't lost her. It had simply learned her language. Rian closed his eyes, letting the sound wash through him, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. The world turned quietly in the years after the resonance wars. The old signals of control had gone silent, leaving only fragments of what had once been an empire of laboratories and satellites. The hybrids, those who once carried the scars of experiment and enslavement, had rebuilt, not as soldiers or subjects, but as communities. Their voices filled the stars again, but now they sang for themselves. Across the sectors, resonance beacons flickered not as weapons but as lighthouses guiding lost travelers. At the center of this fragile new era, Rian Holt stood on the command deck of the Arcline, the first vessel built jointly by human and hybrid hands. It shimmered with gold-veined alloy and steel, a living monument to the woman who had taught two species to speak in harmony. He leaned against the console, his reflection split between the faint glow of monitors and the gold trace of circuitry embedded in his own wrist. Her upgrades had never left him, they had integrated over time, subtle reminders of her touch. Through them, he could still feel the hum of resonance, faint and distant, a network alive with the pulse of memory. Status check, he said, his voice calm, practiced. Lyra appeared beside him, now older in her expression though her kind aged differently. Her once trembling voice had steadied into quiet command. Stabilizers aligned. Gate field opening in 60 seconds. The jump path to the outer colonies is clear. He nodded. And the others? Waiting, she said. They're ready to expand the network. Her eyes softened. You've done what she wanted, Rian. You gave them more than survival. You gave them belonging. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. She gave them that, he said. I just kept the engine running. Lyra tilted her head. You still talk about her like she's gone. She is, he said. Just not in the way I wish. He looked toward the viewport, where the stars stretched into infinity. She's in all of them now. Every resonance-born who breathes carries a fragment of her will. You hear it too, don't you? That hum in the back of your mind. Lyra nodded slowly. It's not just memory. It's comfort. Like a heartbeat that never fades. Exactly, he said quietly. That's her. That's the part she left for us to follow. The countdown timer reached 0, and the ship lurched forward, entering the gate field, a tunnel of cascading light that folded the universe around them. When the distortion cleared, a new world came into view. Vast oceans of silver-blue water beneath a sky streaked with auroras. The colony beneath them shimmered faintly, built from hybrid-grown architecture that pulsed like veins under skin. We made it, Lyra said. The Nexus Colony. Her dream, Rian murmured. A world where no one's born in chains. They descended slowly, the ship's shadow gliding across crystalline towers and open gardens where children of every lineage played. On the landing platform, representatives from across the sectors waited, humans, hybrids, and others drawn to this new order. As Rian disembarked, applause echoed softly through the chamber. He wasn't used to it. They called him the architect, though the title felt too heavy. He'd only been trying to keep a promise. The ceremony was brief. The Council of Colonies voted to establish the Resonant Accord, a peace alliance bound not by fear but by mutual understanding. As Rian stood before the crowd, the translator drones carried his voice across languages. There was a time, he began, when we thought knowledge justified cruelty, when progress was measured by how much we could take from others. But one voice changed that. She reminded us that broken things aren't useless, they're proof that something fought to endure. He paused, scanning the crowd. You all carry her strength now. Every breath, every choice, every connection we build, it's her legacy. Not as a weapon. As a heartbeat that outlived its cage. The hall fell silent, then erupted in quiet resonance, the hybrids humming in unison until the air vibrated with light. That night, the city glowed beneath twin moons. Music filled the streets, strange harmonies of resonance tones and human instruments blending into something new. Rian walked alone through the central plaza, where a monument stood, a statue of golden alloy shaped like an open hand, palm upward, light flowing through its veins. At its base, words were inscribed in both languages, to the one who taught us that compassion is the final form of strength. He reached out, touching the metal. It was warm, faintly alive. You'd hate this, he said softly. You never wanted monuments. A soft hum rippled beneath his palm. For a heartbeat, he thought it was imagination, until a faint whisper brushed the back of his mind. Then stop building statues, and keep building people. He froze. The resonance flickered again, stronger this time, spreading through the air like a wave. You did well, Rian. His breath caught. You're still here, he whispered. I told you. I never left. Where are you? Everywhere they learned to care. His eyes burned. You sacrificed everything. No, she said, her voice echoing like light through glass. I traded endings for beginnings. He laughed softly, tears cutting through years of silence. You sound like you rehearsed that. I've had time, she teased. Then, more gently, you kept your promise. Now keep living. Without you. With me, she said. Always with me. The resonance faded, leaving only warmth in its wake. He stayed there long after the light dimmed, the stars above whispering the same quiet rhythm, the pulse she'd given to the universe. In the days that followed, Rian began traveling again, not as an engineer or leader, but as a teacher. He visited colonies where new generations of resonance-born children studied science without fear of dissection, where humans learned empathy not from guilt but from awe. He watched them build bridges of light between cities and oceans, their laughter echoing in both languages. The world she'd imagined was no longer theory. It was alive, imperfect, and still learning. In quiet moments, he recorded what he'd seen in a small logbook, drawings, fragments of thought, the kind of poetry he'd once mocked. On the final page, he wrote, her heart wasn't just rebuilt. It rebuilt the rest of us. Years passed, and age came softly for him. The enhancements she'd given his body slowed decay but didn't halt it entirely. His hair turned silver, his hands shook when he soldered circuits. Yet when he looked at the sky, he still felt young. He spent his last years on Nexus Colony, teaching apprentices who carried both steel and empathy in their veins. On the anniversary of the Accord's founding, he gathered them one final time beneath the statue in the plaza. "Remember," he said, "technology isn't what saves us. It's what we use to remember who we wanted to be." One of the students, a young hybrid girl with copper eyes, asked softly, "What happens when we forget?" Rian smiled. "Then the stars will remind you." When his time finally came, he didn't fight it. He walked to the sea at dawn, the horizon painted in gold and rose. The air hummed faintly with resonance, every particle alive with memory. He sat by the water, his reflection rippling with light. "You were right," he murmured. "You rebuilt my heart too." A breeze stirred, carrying a familiar hum that vibrated through his bones. "You rebuilt mine first," her voice whispered, soft and distant. He closed his eyes, letting the sound merge with his heartbeat until the two became indistinguishable. The tide rose, lapping gently against his boots. When the sun touched the edge of the water, his breath faded into the same golden glow that filled the sky. By nightfall, the sea shimmered where he had sat, waves aglow with soft luminescence. The next morning, the children of the colony found the spot changed, an arc of crystal grown from the sand, singing faintly in resonance when touched. They didn't weep. They understood. The circle was complete. Generations later, travelers who visited Nexus spoke of a legend, that the ocean itself hummed when the stars aligned, a duet between two voices that had once taught the galaxy compassion. Some said it was myth, others swore they'd heard it. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that they kept listening. And somewhere beyond the constellations, two lights pulsed in harmony, one gold, one human red, never fading, never apart. Because sometimes, being broken is only the first step toward being whole.